Every empire thinks it's different. Every superpower believes it's immune to the patterns of history. Spain thought so in the 1600s. Britain was certain of it in the 1900s. The Soviet Union never saw it coming in 1991. But here's what nobody talks about. Every single empire that has ever collapsed followed the exact same 7 stages. And right now, the United States is showing every symptom of stage 5. I'm not talking conspiracy theories or doomsday predictions. I'm talking hard data, historical patterns, and economic indicators that are impossible to ignore. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly where America stands and, more importantly, what comes next. Let's dive in. Every empire starts the same way: rapid economic growth, military superiority, and a currency that everyone wants to hold. Let me show you how this played out. Spain in the 1500s controlled the world's gold and silver supply. Their currency, the Spanish real, was the global reserve currency. They had the most powerful navy, colonies on every continent, and seemed absolutely unstoppable. Britain in the 1800s commanded 25% of global GDP at its peak. The British pound sterling was the backbone of international trade. The Royal Navy ruled the seas, and London was the financial capital of the world. The Soviet Union after World War II expanded its influence across Eastern Europe and Asia. They matched American military power, launched the first satellite into space, and their industrial output was staggering. And America, after 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement made the US dollar the world's reserve currency, backed by gold at $35 per ounce. By 1960, the United States controlled 40% of global GDP. American military bases circled the globe. The dollar was literally as good as gold. This is where the pattern begins, but it never lasts. Stage 2 is where cracks start appearing. Empires overreach. They take on too many commitments, fight too many wars, and spend beyond their means. Spain fought continuous wars across Europe for over a century. Between 1568 and 1648, they were bleeding resources in the Netherlands alone. Their military spending consumed 75% of government revenue by the early 1600s. Britain's overextension came through maintaining an empire covering 1/4 of Earth's land surface. By 1945, Britain was spending massive amounts defending territories from India to Africa while simultaneously fighting 2 world wars. They were stretched impossibly thin. The USSR maintained a military that consumed nearly 15 to 20% of their entire GDP by the 1980s. They were fighting in Afghanistan, supporting communist regimes worldwide, and engaging in an arms race they simply couldn't afford. Now, look at America. Since 2001, the United States has spent over $8 trillion on wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and counterterrorism operations. Today, America maintains approximately 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. The annual defense budget, over $850 billion in 2024. More than the next 10 countries combined. The pattern is unmistakable. Stage 3. Currency debasement. Here's where it gets really interesting. When empires can't pay their bills, they always make the same choice. They debase their currency. Spain literally melted down the gold and silver from the Americas, but it wasn't enough. They repeatedly devalued their currency, reducing the silver content in their coins. By 1640, the Spanish real had lost 50% of its precious metal content compared to a century earlier. Britain abandoned the gold standard in 1931. During the Great Depression, the pound sterling, once worth $4.86, fell to $3.40 almost overnight. Their currency reserves evaporated as global confidence collapsed. But nothing compares to what happened in America. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon shocked the world by closing the gold window. He suspended dollar convertibility to gold. Why? Because America's gold reserves had fallen to just 10,000 metric tons, while foreign governments held dollars worth far more than the available gold. This is critical. In 1971, you could exchange $35 for 1 ounce of gold. Today, that same ounce costs over $2,600. The dollar has lost more than 98% of its purchasing power against gold in just 5 decades. The Federal Reserve has printed trillions since then. During the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic, the money supply exploded. Between 2020 and 2021 alone, nearly 40% of all dollars ever created came into existence. This is textbook currency debasement, and it's accelerating. Once currency debasement begins, debt spirals out of control. It becomes an addiction that no government can quit. Spain defaulted on its debt 4 times, between 1557 and 1647. Each default destroyed investor confidence and made borrowing more expensive, creating a vicious cycle they never escaped. Britain's national debt reached 250% of GDP after World War II. They were still paying off war debts until 2015, 70 years later. The Soviet Union's situation was even worse. By the late 1980s, they were borrowing heavily from Western banks just to keep their economy functioning. When oil prices collapsed in 1986, their primary revenue source vanished. The debt became unsustainable. Now here's America's reality. US national debt currently stands at $36 trillion. That's 124% of GDP as of 2024. The Congressional Budget Office projects this will reach 166% by 2054 under current policies. But it gets worse. Interest payments on this debt cost over $1 trillion per year now, more than the entire defense budget. And with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to fight inflation, these payments are increasing dramatically. The debt-to-GDP ratio is rising faster now than at any point except World War II and the pandemic. Here's the terrifying part. America is projected to spend more on interest payments than on national defense by 2028. The debt is growing faster than the economy itself. This is where America stands right now. Stage 5. The slow erosion of reserve currency dominance. Spain's currency lost its global status by the mid-1600s as Dutch and British currencies took over international trade. Once that happened, Spain's decline became irreversible. The British pound's reserve status crumbled after World War II. By 1950, the dollar had replaced it. Britain lost its empire, its economic dominance, and its global influence within a single generation. Today, we're watching the dollar's share of global reserves decline in real time. In 2000, the dollar comprised 71% of global foreign exchange reserves. By 2024, that number has fallen to 58%, the lowest level since 1995. That's a 13 percentage point drop in just 2 decades. Central banks worldwide are diversifying away from dollars. China, Russia, India, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia are conducting trade in their own currencies. The Chinese yuan's share of reserves has doubled since 2016. Gold holdings by central banks have surged over 200% in value since 2015 as nations hedge against dollar weakness. Foreign ownership of U.S. Treasury securities has dropped from 50% in 2014 to just 30% in 2025. The world is quietly losing confidence in dollar-denominated assets. If this trend continues at the current pace, the dollar's share of reserves could fall below 50% by 2034. Once reserve currency status is truly lost, there's no getting it back. History has never shown a reversal. Stage 6 is social and political instability. Wealth inequality explodes, social cohesion breaks down, and political extremism rises. Spain experienced this in the 1600s with widespread poverty despite gold flowing from colonies. Britain saw it post-World War II with the dismantling of their empire. The USSR witnessed it in the late 1980s with protests, food shortages, and political chaos. America's wealth inequality is now at levels not seen since the 1920s. The top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Political polarization is at historic highs. Social trust in institutions is collapsing. Stage 7 is the final collapse, or major restructuring. Spain lost its empire and became a second-tier power by 1700. Britain surrendered global leadership to America by 1950. The Soviet Union disintegrated completely in 1991. So, is America at stage 5? The data suggests yes. National debt exceeding 124% of GDP. Dollar reserve status declining from 71% to 58%. Interest payments approaching defense spending levels. Foreign holders selling treasury securities. These aren't opinions. These are measurable facts. History doesn't repeat, but it absolutely rhymes. Every empire that reached stage 5 eventually reached stage 7. No exceptions. The question isn't if this pattern continues. The question is how long stage 5 lasts and what stage 6 will look like when it arrives. What do you think? Is America following the same path as Spain, Britain, and the USSR, or is this time actually different? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video made you rethink America's economic future, hit that subscribe button because we're going deep on economic trends every day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.